All right, welcome to another episode of the Tiger Mileage Report podcast here at TigersOnReport.com. I'm Rahel Legacy. Alongside me is Brandon Day and Chris Brown, and joining us this evening is a guy who we've been listening to all season long, and he's been doing some great work with friend of the show, Greg Ganga, who decided to talk some smack before the show, but I guess wanted to pass along to Bobby there. But joining us today is Bobby Scales II, the Tigers radio analyst guy. He has so many titles, Bobby. I don't know where to start in terms of how many titles you have, but just great to join us on the show. And we have a question. Chris, why don't you take it away on the first question we always ask our first-time guests?
No, absolutely. Yeah, Bobby, thanks for joining us. You've done just about everything a baseball person could possibly do. But one thing we always ask is about your earliest baseball memory. So if there's something that sticks out, we'd love to hear it.
Earliest baseball memory. I was my first baseball game, truthfully. So to back up a little bit, I was born in Southfield, Michigan. We lived in Troy when we lived there, and then we ended up moving to New York for a hot second and down to Atlanta where I grew up. But my very first baseball game was in Tiger Stadium. Pops took me to it was the Royals. It was 84. I was 6 years old. My birthday in October. I hadn't turned that 70. So it was 84 that day. And we set on the third base side, and the foul ball came close to us. We didn't get it, but that's my first memory. The Tigers lost that day, which they didn't do much of in '84. But yeah, that's it.
Wow. So yeah, it's a connection to the organization from way back. I right before the show, I was looking up your stats, and then I'm sure you remember who you got your first big league hit off, but I don't know if everybody else does. So if you want to say who it is, I think it might be kind of fun.
Yeah, no, the first big league hit was a day game in Wrigley. It was off Tim Lincecum when he was big time Timmy Jim. This is coming off the 08 Cy Young, and stuff was nasty, man. But he threw me a fastball middle, and he punched me out the first at bat. But he threw me a fastball middle, and I got a knock on the second one. So there you go.
Yeah, nice hard oppo single. I just saw it's up on YouTube if anybody wants to look at it.
Yeah, so it's one of those things where you this whole weekend, Bobby, there were so many defensive plays. There's so much great baseball going on. I don't know where to start, but as far as just in terms of the stretch of baseball you've seen so far by the Tigers, and all the time you've watched this, I mean, have you ever witnessed anything like this?
No, witnessed up close. No, I mean, you see the run. I feel like it was the Rays, maybe an 11. And then you got, the 07 Rockies when it was like 22-7 down the stretch. They had to come back and win the West or get into the play. I can't remember exactly how it would, but you hear about those stretches, but something to be apart, right? To be connected in some way to what's going on out with these is unbelievable. So yeah, it's been awesome.
Yeah, a lot of those teams that really made a run too, they had, at least like one or two sort of established stars. I think, one of the shocking things about this is that, obviously Tarek Skubal, Riley Green, the Tigers have, kind of got a couple guys who are starting to establish themselves that way, but it's a really young team. Can you kind of speak to what it's like to have a whole bunch of young talent kind of all come together, coming through the minor leagues together? A lot of these guys have played together since they were in Lakeland. How much of an edge, or at least maybe like a pressure relieving factor is it to kind of, have that many guys who all know each other and have that relationship built up?
Yeah. No, I don't think there's any question. Anytime you can have people you've been around, you know them off the field, you've been comfortable with them, you've been through good times individually. You've been through bad times individually. You've been through times where you're playing well and they're not, vice versa. You've been through times where you've won things together. Sure. I mean, there's a level of familiarity and it also helps. You can tell, this is the cool part for me. You can tell these guys really, really like each other. Like if they didn't play baseball together, they'd go to, I don't know, Lions game together, or they, do whatever dudes that age do now together. Right. I'm old head. No hair. I got gray hair. No hair on my head. I got grays in my goat. I don't know what these cats do now.
Yeah. Fortnite.
But you can tell too. I mean, you can hear them talk in the off season. These guys go, wherever they're, to wherever their homes are, and they hang out in the off season. That's when you really know you like somebody in baseball, because you're gonna be around them 200 days a year. But if you want to spend more time around them when in the off season, that means you're really cool with that person. There's a lot of those guys that talk about stuff they're gonna do together in the off season. That can't help but manifest itself in the clubhouse and also in the field, while they're actually playing the game too. And they know how to even motivate each other. They know how to fix each other's swings or deliveries. Say, hey man, when you're going good, this is what I see from you. Sometimes that's more impactful than anything a coach has to say. So I definitely think it plays a part. But even some of the guys that have come in lately, the Trey Sweeneys of the world, just got here. I mean, he for 5 minutes, but you see how much these guys enjoy his presence and enjoy him being around. And it's just been a joy to watch. It really has.
Yeah, the team building, portion of it is really interesting too. Because I mean, I think obviously you're a huge stat guy. You've been, you've worked in player development. You've done all these different things. Yeah. We all try to stick to the advanced stats, and dive into that stuff. But then there's just that element of chemistry that's, it's hard to quantify. It's hard to, it's kind of hard to speak to anything factual. But it's just so obviously there with this team. It's hard to discount that as a pretty big factor.
No, look,
Chris,
I mean,
fire away.
I was a glue guy. That's the funny part about this whole thing. My evolution and journey in terms of the analytics of the game and the part they play was after I got into a front office. But as a player, I was a glue guy. I was the dude that on off days, I was the one that had the grill fired up, that was cooking the burgers and bringing cats over and even they were guys on the other team sometimes that we knew that were already in town for the off day. That was me. I was the guy that was organizing stuff, in the clubhouse. So that's kind of who I was as just a human and as a player. But yeah, I mean, you have to pay attention to the analytics and all that kind of stuff and the different stats and what they tell you. But there's no substitute for what these guys got going on, which is true belief and true chemistry. And you're absolutely right. There is zero way to quantify it. How many emotional wins above replacement is it worth? I have no idea. I just know it's worth a lot. Yeah. These cats are balling right now. It's amazing to watch it happen.
Yeah.
So one of the things too, that speaking of analytics too, one of the things that I was looking at is you look at the stats in Toledo when it comes to pitching. You look at guys like Ty Madden, Brian Hurdler, and you look at it. We've watched so many games, and we're sitting there going, "All right, what do they see up here that we don't see down in Toledo?" Because Ty Madden had struggled against getting lefties out. All of a sudden, they change his mechanics. Same thing with Brian Hurdler, and they're completely weaponized. And so, how with Toledo stats, and even I know with the strike zone, how much does that change when they get up here?
Well, so I think that's a good question, and it's deep. Okay, so a lot of times, especially for relievers, we know this to be true for sure. But even for starters, you get off to a bad starter, you have some clunkers early, that bangs up your whole year, right? Because especially for pitchers, it takes a long time and a lot of innings to get those numbers down, and a lot of innings of scoreless baseball to get those numbers down. So I'm not saying you can't look at those numbers at all. There's value in them, but they don't always tell the whole story. I think what is very important for a front office, whether it be, whoever, all the front office, whether it be, Scott Harris or Gark or whoever across the industry, is, okay, these are the top line numbers. They are what they are. Let's keep asking why and why and why and how. Okay, so obviously we've identified the issues with the left-handed hitters with both Madden and Brent Herter. Okay, why? Now there's TrackMan numbers, and there's Hawkeye numbers, and there's feedback from the catchers, and then quite frankly the hitters are telling you a story too. If you're really attentive and astute to what's going on with the opposition hitters, you can, okay, he's clearly they're not respecting this or they're not respecting that at all. Is there something we can do to combat that? And so then that's when you get together with your pitching group and you formulate a plan. Okay, what if we gave them this weapon? And you go in the bullpen, the guy's got to feel comfortable throwing it, then you take it into the game. And then that's when you can run into some of the stats climbing into an area where you don't like, where they look kind of ugly, but then you hit on something. Okay. And okay, let's take this into the game. We like the design of this pitch. We like how it tunnels off this pitch. You're comfortable with this grip? Sure. Take it in the game. Okay. Then you got to get comfortable throwing it in the game. And it may get whacked around, but then it may click in 1 or 2 pitches. Now we got something. These things take time. They take time. There's no answers in the can. You know, I think one of the things that we have done a good job of using, whether it be the edgertronic cameras or the different kind of technologies for the super slow motion cameras, and using the spinners, pairing that off, understanding how guys path through the zone is with their arm, understanding the spin and spin efficiencies and things of that nature. It helps you, I believe it helps you identify pathways to improvement faster. You still have to take it into the game at 7 o'clock. Mm-hmm. And that's the part that people probably get a little bit impatient with. It's like, okay, we've identified this. We've seen this, this coming off. It's coming out of his hand better. You know, there's more hop to it, or there's more spin, or we're killing more spin on the changeup, or we're killing more spin on a split finger. Now we got taken to the game. We got to get results in the game. And that's where I think when you look at the back end of what's happened this season, the improvements that Herder has made, the improvements that Sean Gunther's made, the improvements that Ty Madden has made in terms of, okay, their numbers, their stat line is ugly. But let's look at the last few weeks. Let's look at the last month before they got here. We made some real gains. Now we have weapons that work at the major league level. And that's, I've said this quite a bit on the broadcast too. You have veteran scouts, you have veteran special assistants in all of these front offices that where Scott may say, okay, hey, listen, this is where we are. I need you to go in there. Can this guy help us at the big league level? Does he have a weapon that can help him survive here? Can he help us get outs here in a short span or whatever span, we need to use him in? And that's when your guys go in, you look at the numbers, you look at the improvement, and then some of your whether it be your special assistants or some of the more trusted scouts in the organization who are doing the self-scouting on the Tigers organization are like, hey, Scott, this is a guy. Or Jeff, hey, this is a guy. I know what the numbers say, but he can help us. And that's where that trust is. Again, you talk about chemistry in the front office. That's where that trust is. And it's the minor league coaches as well, and it's all of that. And that's really the job of great GMs and great president of baseball ops. There's so much information. You have to manage it all and distill it all down and make it usable pieces, and then say, okay, we're going to pull the trigger on this guy. We're not going to pull the trigger on that guy, or we're going to do this, or we're going to do that. But the information is coming from all directions. And I know that's kind of a long-winded answer, but that's kind of how it works. I mean, with not just the guys you hear, but a lot of the guys who you've never even heard of, or you guys know, but a lot of the guys that the public doesn't know of that are coming. I mean, Clark and McGonigal, they're the same way. They're going through these same things. All these same conversations are happening. Yeah. Max Clark was our minor league player of the year. That's great. There's still holes we got to close up. He's not ready yet, and that's okay. And you can leverage the technology. You can leverage the eyeball test of veteran scouts and veteran people in player development to help close those gaps faster.
When you're looking outside the Tigers, like, your own guys, when they're out looking for, people from other organizations, is coachability now a big thing that they're looking for because they know they're going to make these changes? Whereas maybe like 10 to 15 years ago, it was a little bit more like, trial and error. Like we have to experiment with some things. Whereas now they can kind of ID a guy and go like, look, if we can kill the spin on that changeup a little bit more, there's much more specificity to what they can, kind of predict in advance that they want to do with the guy. Do they look for that more, or are we at a point where players are so used to making these adjustments with technology and data that, it's not as big an issue as maybe I would think it might have been like 10 or 15 years ago, where, you don't know if you can trust your new coaches yet, all that sort of thing.
Well, so I'm gonna try to the connection broke up a little bit. Hopefully I'm gonna answer this question. I think it was, just leveraging the technology now as opposed to what we did, years ago. Was that the gist of it?
And sort of like the coachability of players now, as opposed to maybe 15 years ago where you couldn't tell them so specifically what you were going to do, in advance.
Yeah. So first of all, you always need you always need, specifically in player development, you need people that understand what they're looking at, right? You have to have people that truly understand what they're looking at. Let's say the power goes out, the internet's down. McGonagall figure it out. We don't have time to wait for Comcast or whoever to come by and fix it. We got to have an understanding of what's going on. So you need talented people who understand what they're looking at. Now, part of that talent now in today's baseball is you better understand the numbers and you better understand the biomechanics of it. Because if you don't, then you can't. You're leaving something on the table. And as an organization, I need people. I don't need experts, but I need people with an open mind who have a baseline level of knowledge, but are also willing to grow in all those spaces. And I always make this sound like you're at a major corporation, right? Where you have a CFO or you have a director of finance who's over a department, or let's use the CFO, right? So the CFO comes through, or a CEO who's come through a finance background. Their background's in finance. They graduated finance, MBA, all the things go through. They've been vice president of finance, and now they're CEO in their background. Well, you need a CMO to cover you up. You also need a chief COO, a chief executive officer over the organization to cover up those areas, because it's really difficult for everybody to be good at everything, and most people aren't. There's always going to be holes. You need somebody who you trust, a trusted lieutenant, a trusted number two, a trusted colleague that can cover up. So what I'm getting at is all of these skill development spaces, right? They have people who, okay, this hitting coach is really good at approach, really good at approach. The biomechanics, not so much. The numbers, not so much. But boy, they can teach approach. How can we supplement that coach with someone who really understands how the body moves? How can we supplement that coach with someone who really understands what the offensive numbers look like in the dynamics of how those work in terms of offensive baseball? Same thing on the pitching side, right?
Yeah,
we've got a pitching coach that can absolutely murder a data presentation. Pitched, gets it, understands it, doesn't necessarily have has a firm baseline grip on how the body works, but we've got another person on that staff that can really, really dive into that. That's what it looks like today, right? Yeah. And so I always use this example. So if you go into, like, if you're teaching a kid a new pitch in spring training and it's the beginning of spring training and they got a 35 pitch bullpen. 20 years ago, it was okay, glove side, arm side, glove side, arm side, glove side with the fastball. Now you're down 5. Now you're at 30. Okay, but you're trying to teach the guy a new slider. So you're going to go gloves. You go 5. You got 5 fastballs, glove side, arm side, glove side, arm side. Now you're down 30 pitches, right? Okay. Slider doesn't work. It stinks, right? So let's put this grip in there. Boom, rip this slider. Boom, cement mixer, nothing. Okay, try it again. Cement mixer, nothing. Okay, so you got a coach behind them looking at it, says, okay, try this. And then you're asking the catcher, hey, how's it going down there? It's not doing anything. Okay, now you're up to 10. You got 20 pitches left, right? Okay, try this grip. Boom, rips that one. Okay, now we got something. How's that? Pretty good. All right. Okay, how's that? Pretty good. Hey, so-and-so, stand in here. Give us a look. Boom. So, you got the catcher, pitcher, looks good. That's fine. Stand a hitter in there. Stand another catcher in there who's not catching the bullpen. He's a hitter. He goes, yeah, the spins, it's too loose. It's loopy. It's not doing enough. It's breaking, but it's too wide. Now you're up to 22 pitches. You got 8 pitches left. You still haven't gotten to an answer. So now you get in there, glove side, arm side, glove side, arm side, glove side, arm side. You got 30 pitches left. But you also got an edgertronic camera back there. And you can understand how this pitcher's hand works in space. Is he a guy who's a heavy pronator to where he gets to this side of the ball? He can't spin the baseball over there anyway. So now we know that, and we can just, okay, the slider's not going to work. Is there a way we can get a cutter offset it? Or we can get him really on the side of the ball. We can build the sweeper. Or do we need to just put a splitter in his hand? And then because his hand works this way, he pronates, maybe it's going to fade down and away. We can do that faster now. There's still an element of getting feedback from a catcher and a hitter and a pitching coach, but we have access to the spin rate data pitch by pitch and every bullpen they throw. You have access to some of the edgertronic or high speed frame rate cameras that they can really dive in on how a pitcher's hand works in space. You can see, okay, we like the grip, your hand works right, but there's just put a little bit more pressure on this index finger as the ball's coming out.
So the efficiency. Yeah.
So you have to leverage everything. It's everything. And that for me, and maybe that's just me as a human, I'm more centrist in my beliefs. It's an election year. We're definitely not going down that road. But I'm a firm believer that the answers are in the middle with most things. So yes, you need coaches that have stripes. Yes, if you were a ball player, of course it does. Does it exclude you from doing it? No. But you need someone with working knowledge of the skill. You need someone with working knowledge of how to execute the skill. You need someone with working knowledge of the biomechanics of the skill itself. And then also you need someone with working knowledge of the technology and how you can leverage it.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of fascinating. And the three of us, we watch tons and tons of minor league baseball. So we kind of just look through it through this lens anyway. And this current Tigers team run feels heavily driven by the young guys. And beyond that, it's heavily driven by player development. You know, it's one thing to get a bunch of first round picks, and they do have like Riley Green, but then you've got a 9th rounder in Skubal. You got a 19th rounder in Kerry Carpenter. You got Bo Brisky and Will Vest were, 12th and 27th, and Brant Herter's a 7th rounder. And it just feels like there's been kind of I don't know, they've jumped like light years in development over the last 3 or 4 years. And I mean, just what you're talking about now, the technology seems like a huge advancement there, but you are kind of uniquely suited to answer this. You were a player and then you were running player development. Like what are the biggest changes you've seen?
Just in the space as a whole, I would say we have done a much better job in the last probably 5 to 7 years. I take that back, probably 7 to 10 years of making sure that everybody's individual needs as a player are serviced. Here's what I mean. I was a live wire. I needed no coffee. I needed no Red Bull. I needed to calm down. And also I ran hot. So if I did something in a game and I screwed it up, I was so hard on myself. I didn't need a coach running down from the other end of the dugout, getting in my rear end about this mistake I made. Chances are I'm going to be harder on myself than that guy's ever going to be on me. And so it wasn't put my arm around you, love me up, like it's going to be okay. It was like, hey man, and it, hey, just we got to get that ball at second base. Absolutely right. Or you got a place to be right there. You went to sleep. I know. Whereas some guys you got to kick them in the rear end. Some guys you just got to give them a look. I was more actually this guy. Just give him a look. And like, I already know. I screwed it up. I know. You don't have to tell me. And so I think what we've done in the industry is done a much better job of understanding, okay, this player from a physical standpoint, he's built like this. Okay, these are the things. He's a tight mover. He's a loose mover. These are things. This is how his body works. And then it's okay from a psychological perspective, from a mental performance perspective. Okay, is he a high energy guy? Is he a low energy guy? Do we have to paint the picture or do we have to give the numbers? How does that player receive information? Right? Like, So I'll give you an example. I was with a team and we had a catcher really struggled following a game plan. This was the smart kid. He went to a very good, well-known university that is known academically and athletically. Obviously, he was a baseball player. So, long story short, I was in town and I was in an advanced meeting for a series, and we kept talking about you got to paint the picture for him, paint the picture for him, paint the picture for him. And I said, guys, where did this guy go to school? We named the school. Anybody know his major? No. He was an econ major. And we keep talking about painting the picture for this guy. Why don't we just give him the percentages?
Yeah.
Throw it here. Yeah. Put fastball over here 48% of the time. Put breaking ball in the dirt 71% of the time. Do that. And it worked. It clicked in. He received the information much better. So it doesn't matter what I'm saying. how that player receives it is the key. And I think we're doing a much better job of understanding the individual and giving them whatever information they need, both physically, okay, we're asking this guy to execute this skill, but his body literally can't do it. He's not made that way. He can't do it. But okay, so let's tailor that to make him do this. And then giving it to them mentally and meeting them on a mental level that's much better than the cookie cutter approach. And even when I came through, our coaches meant well. They cared. I love most of my coaches I had. But boy, it was very boom, 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 boom. That's kind of how we kind of made factory baseball players, especially domestically in the States. So I think we're doing a much better job of tailoring the physical message, the mental message, the emotional message to today's player. And I think we're accelerating their improvement and accelerating their development as a result.
Yeah, and touching on all their different learning styles. I know Ryan Garko, these two interviewed Ryan Garko, and he talked a lot about the importance of tailoring those individual plans.
Yeah.
Getting the Spanish speaking players plan in Spanish, which you would think would be obvious, but wasn't necessarily done. You teach part-time in the off season, or at least you have. Does all that sort of inform, kind of both ways that you're teaching kids, you're thinking of all these different learning styles, and it kind of works the same way in teaching anything, sports, anything else?
Well, I was a substitute teacher, so I was the guy that just made sure that the students didn't burn the place down when the real teacher wasn't there. But shout to my real teachers out there. It's a big deal. Being able to teach the youth is a big deal. It's a privilege, and it's important. But I think it's basic. I mean, you have to give the players what they need. I'll give you another example. When I was with one of these teams, we had a young man come in from another prominent university, Power 5 university, and he was very analytical and very mechanical, to the point where he walked in and he opened up his computer and he showed our pitching coach and our pitching coordinator every pitch he threw over the last 4 years, and the spin rates and the spin axes and all that stuff. Like, so again, just being able to connect with your students, right? Your students, they're learning. They're on a pathway to learning and getting to the next level, to the next dot. Really, not even the next level, just the next dot in their development. And you have to be able to connect with them. That's really the number one thing. I don't care how much technology you have. Can you connect with your players? And even if it's, hey man, listen, we're going to get to that. I promise you. But right now, let's start here. Or tell me more about what you learned using this way of development. Getting on their level. I'm a big believer. You got to meet those guys where they are. You want to get them to buy into your process. You want to get them to buy into what you do organizationally, but you first got to meet them where they are. And sometimes that requires a coach going further across the bridge than maybe they're comfortable or than they're used to. But it's vital in development. It's no different. Listen, this is no different than teaching anybody anything. If you start out top level here and you see the eyes glaze over, you lost them. Mm-hmm. You have to be very strategic with how you enter the conversation. You be very strategic with how you cultivate that trust, so that they can know that your number one thought is how to make them better.
So I want to move things kind of tangentially related to this, just with some of the stuff you talked about. That one of the big stories in baseball last week was C.J. Abrams. Young all-star, great young player, gets in trouble, gets sent to the minors for staying out all night at the casino, right? Yeah. And to me, what I'm sure the organization didn't love that he stayed out all night for a day game, but to me, I think what they probably didn't like the most is that he was there by himself. I feel like if he was there with like 6 teammates, they would have been okay with it. Like, they weren't going to suspend all 6 guys. And so it just comes back to me to this idea that you see a lot in scouting and when people talk about development, about a player's makeup and what makes good makeup and bad makeup. And I don't know, you were a glue guy. You said these guys on this team, this Tigers team, like each other a lot, but I wonder if you could speak a little bit to what makes good makeup and what makes bad makeup.
If I knew the answer to that, I wouldn't, I'd be really high off the hog. No, listen, I think that's a big question. And you know, and in fairness, I don't know, you know, we don't know all, we'll never know the full story behind Abrams and what have you. I'll say this. I mean, what makes good makeup and bad makeup? Number one, you got to get a guy who's completely bought into trying to improve themselves on a daily basis. So break that down. What does that mean? Is it in your best interest, if you're trying to improve yourself on a daily basis, to stay out till 8 o'clock in the morning when you know you got a day game at 1:20? That's a no, right? I think scouts are the first. The scouts are the lifeblood of this entire industry. Period. Full stop. Now, this is coming from a PD guy. I scouted. This is coming from a PD guy, because if you don't give those guys solid players and solid young men, and they are, but when you're scouting them, even when you draft them out of college, they're young men, right? When you get solid humans, that doesn't mean perfect ones. It means solid humans to work with is difficult. You know, you're looking for a guy. Obviously, they got to be able to play. There's physical things they have to be able to do. But I'm a big believer that, you know, if you can find a guy with aptitude, you find a guy with work ethic, you find a guy with an open mind who understands it. Even the guys who are very advanced, you look at the Trouts and the Harpers who get to, you know, the Sotos who get to the big leagues in their teens. There's still a long way to go in their development, and it really never stops. You're never stop developing as a human. You never stop that quest for learning and how you can better yourself and those around you. So it's finding guys with that mindset, and the real work is from the scouts. It's the area scouts. It's those guys. I mean, if you think about it, if you have, let's just say there's a prospect from local Michigan kid, and you got a guy. I mean, you're over there, you know, and you like the kid in high school, you turned him in, didn't draft him, that's fine. He's from, we're talking, you know, a local high school in Detroit. Let's call it otherwise, just for the sake of simplicity. And all the Catholic Central people, don't at me. All the UD Jesuit, all the rest of the Catholic, leave me alone. Divine Child. I'm going to hear about this, I'm sure. Yep. Country Day, just insert name of high school here. But you've liked this kid since he's probably if he's a guy, you think he's a guy, probably been on the varsity since his sophomore year. So you're talking about 15 years old. So you've done the work on this kid since he was 15 years old. You've talked to the teachers at the high school. You've talked to the summer ball coaches. You know the parents. Is the home intact? Is the home split up? You know, the parents divorced. Who's the decision maker? If dad's not around, is it the uncle? Right? Like, you know these things about the player. He goes on to Wayne State. He plays for Coach Ryan Kelly down at Wayne State. Good friend of mine. Shout to RK down at Wayne State. It's his birthday today. Happy birthday, brother. But you know, you've talked to him. You've talked to Sage the pitcher. You've talked to the pitching coach. You know the summer league coach, right? By the time the Tigers draft this player and he gets in the system, you're the local area scout in Detroit, in southeastern Michigan. You've known this kid 7 years now. Right? So the information you have about this kid, you like, it's got to be right. It has to be right. Because you have more knowledge about this young man than anybody else. You know his family, you know the current girlfriend, you know the old girlfriends. Like, that's what these guys get paid to do. They got to get the talent right. But the most important piece is you got to get the makeup right, because the makeup is the difference. You know, I'm a big Herm Edwards fan. And he said this a long time ago. This was years ago on like one of the Sunday football shows. He says most quarterbacks in the NFL don't talent out. They fail out because we don't know enough about their work ethic and their study habits. Right? They're arm talent. They can move enough in the pocket in the pro game to be successful. They don't talent out. They fail out because they're not really willing to go in there and burn the midnight oil. They're not willing to stay after and throw the routes. They're not willing to work on the things that they are deficient on. They're not willing to do the things to continue to enhance their strengths. And to me, that falls under the makeup category. Who is this player we're drafting? Does he compete? What happens when it gets hot? He's been the best player his entire life, more often than not. That's what these guys have been, the best players, the best pitchers on their team. What happens when they get punched in the mouth? What then? Do they run from it? Or they run to it and say, that stunk, I got to get better. How are we going to do it? You know, and then obviously it goes into what kind of player is this guy off the field. Listen, I mean, these guys are young dudes, man. You can't expect them to stay in and, order Uber Eats in every night and watch Netflix. That's not how that works.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you can't have them running the streets. You go out, hang out with your buddies, if you're of age, have a couple pops, it's fine. Take the Uber back to the house. Nothing wrong with that. But again, you can't run the streets and you can't chase it every night. You can't, you probably shouldn't be out to 8 o'clock in the morning before 1 o'clock day game.
I'm just saying.
So those are some of the things when you talk about finding learning the makeup and finding the makeup and understanding what that is. That's a lot on, that's a lot on the area scouts and the regional guys to really get that right. It's hard.
No.
It's hard. I'm a believer that's the hardest part of the game, because you got to really hunker down and do some detective work.
And now, we've reached a point where there's so much more data, like so much can be quantified, that all that stuff seems even more important. We've seen, like the evolution of awareness of getting enough sleep, diet, nutrition, all those other things, because teams all have the same data on these guys. They know what the player physically is capable of, from an earlier age and more specifically. So yeah, all that stuff seems to be, all the X factors have become way more important.
100%. Those, and that's where you win in the margins. All these teams have the same data, right? But that's where you really win in the margins. I mean, and talk about what it looks like now versus even 15 years ago. Like I remember when I was coming, now it's 20 years ago, really. But when I was coming through as a young minor league player, you wouldn't get caught. You wouldn't dare get caught in the clubhouse taking a nap before a game. Oh my God.
Yeah.
You'd have somebody coming through the clubhouse with, Skip would walk through the clubhouse, sleep at home.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's like, did you get your nap in? A lot of these major league clubhouses have rooms dedicated towards, sleep and naps. And I know it was one team, I can't remember who it was. I think I read an article in The Athletic about, they had all their guys, they had a sleep specialist come in for training, and all the guys who they knew, all the fan roster guys got fitted with a special pillow with a, from a chiropractor or whatever, so that when they slept in the proper anatomical position.
I want that.
Yeah.
Sure. I just go down to TJ Maxx and grab a couple new ones and call it good. You know what I mean? That's kind of how it goes here.
Or even the amount of blue light.
But again, we know better now. That's the thing. That's the cool part about it.
And to bring it back a little bit to this 2024 Tigers team, when you were talking about guys with makeup and stuff, and I thought of a couple of examples of Trey Sweeney. Now, obviously, what's really helped with Trey Sweeney is hitting home runs and getting big hits and stuff like that. But there are a couple instances where there was a couple of weeks ago, he just, I don't know, didn't set the internal clock for the batter and got a ground ball, and the runner beat it out at first. And you could, like, all right, well, that can't happen again. And it hasn't since. And then just the other day, that ball fell in the sort of Bermuda Triangle and shallow left field, and he didn't go get it. And then he made that spectacular catch when he was running into Riley Green the other day. And he said, I let that one drop the other day. I wasn't going to let that happen again. And it's like, that's exactly the sort of stuff that I want to see from my young players, making those, like, that's a mistake, not going to happen again. And so I don't know if you could speak to Trey Sweeney or any of these young guys. What have you been impressed about with those guys?
Development continues at the major league level. The game gets faster as you climb the ladder, right? And I'll never forget, everybody says you'll be fine in the batter's boxes everywhere else where you really gotta dial it up when you get there. And sure enough, man, I remember my first experience. Now, even for me, I was 31 years old. I was a grown man. I had a mortgage and a wife at the time and 2 car payments. But still, like, you notice, damn, it's fast here. And so, but I think it speaks to, I believe in the 3 A's. It's aptitude, it's athletic ability, and it's adaptability. Okay. If you clearly have a level of athletic ability, if you wouldn't be here even in this conversation, right? But do you have enough aptitude to take the things you're learning, and then can you pair that with your athletic ability and then be adaptable, sometimes pitch to pitch, game to game, series to series? That's the difference. If you have those 3, you got a chance to be a good major league player, right? And to recognize those things quickly. You love that as a coach. You love that as an executive administrator because you made a mistake, you corrected him, figured it out. He didn't make the mistake again. He quickened up his pace. He had to move faster. This game's fast at the major league level. He had to move faster. He started to move faster, right? The ball drops in left field in Kansas City. I screwed it up. If I have to run through this fence to catch this next ball that's over there, I'm going to do that. But what happened to me a couple nights ago will never happen to me again in the major leagues. I love it. He has plenty of athletic ability. He has aptitude to understand the situations, and now he's adapted to his environment. That's development. Those are huge developmental steps at the big league level. And so you're seeing this all around. Colt Keith's journey throughout this season is one to be studied. Yeah. I mean, because he got kicked in the teeth early. And it was a whole bunch of factors. Yeah, I haven't shied away from this. Like, yeah, he got the dough. He got paid.
Yeah.
That's a thing. It's a big thing. Like, why? And I'm always I'm of the mind you lean into it. Yeah, he's making a lot of money, and he knows that. That's pressure. But he stayed with it. Yep. And he was getting beat up early. He was kind of behind fastballs and ahead of breaking balls, and then he got on time, and then he tried to launch some balls, try to hit some homers pull side. Don't do that. Get back in the middle of the field, hit some balls in the other gap. Did that, and now look at him. All of these steps he's taken throughout the year. He's smart enough. There's aptitude there. He's smart enough to understand what's going on. He's got plenty of athletic ability, and he's got the ability to adapt to the situation and learn from them. And he's learned from all these things. What he's done before, impressive. Like this is exactly what we're talking about. Watching these guys get better at the major league level. Now, baseball, the game itself is so young now. This is the norm. This is not the outlier, and it's not just our club. Right? This is absolutely the norm. You're going to have guys get to the big leagues. They're further away from their developmental ceiling than they've ever been. You're never done. You're always chasing it, right? But these guys are coming in, whereas, 15, 20 years ago, you get a guy at AAA spitting a number, he's got 2,000 at bats in the minor leagues, or he's got 1,500 at bats in the minor leagues, and this is his developmental ceiling. He's here. You're getting guys who their developmental ceiling's here, but they're entering at a much lower point. And you're expecting them to perform, but they've got to get better. But you're also there's pressure to win. And if you don't play well, you get the trip back to AAA. It's a lot, man. It's a lot. It's a different landscape in the major leagues than it was a number of years ago. So it's a lot on these guys.
So we did get a couple questions in the chat too. That a friend of the show, see Greg here, Greg, long-time listener, first-time caller. Mr. Scales is a top-notch on the radio. Big fan. How much of the success over the stretch can be attributed to how Rogers and Dingler have handled the staff?
I think quite a bit. These guys have done a tremendous job, and I touched on this the other day. Carson, it was Carson Kelly and Jake Rogers here early. And Carson's got a lot of stripes in this league, done a lot of things. He's into his 30s. Jake, I think, is 29 now, if I'm not mistaken. So, I know that Jake's pitch calling is what really he needed to evolve. Going back to last year and into this year, he's done that. And now you make the decision to move Carson at the deadline, and Jake becomes that guy for Dylan Dingler. And this pitching staff has done is all year long. I mean, it's epic, man. The way these guys have performed. Brian Sammons isn't even on this team right now, and he was unbelievable when he's here. That just lets you know where this club is, right? So yeah, they've had a huge impact. I was gonna say putting the right fingers down, pressing the right buttons on PitchCom. It's huge. You don't see these guys shake. Very rarely do you see these guys shake. And the number one thing you have to do as a pitcher, not that I ever threw, but in talking to guys, but the number one thing you have to do as a pitcher is you got the ball in your hand. You start the action. You have to be committed to that pitch. And very, very rarely do you see these guys shake and go to something else. Mm-hmm. They push a button, they hear whatever the call is in the pitch comm, and they go with it. And that tells you all you need to know about how much these guys trust the work that these guys put in terms of understanding the game plan and understanding where to go. So They've had a huge impact on it.
All right. Yeah, even especially with like just the fact that I remember when Dinkler was out last year, and then immediately Erie got better towards the second half of the season, and it was like night and day difference. And then just to see him do it at the plate at AAA, which was a big part of cutting down the strikeouts, and be able to use his athletic ability just really start putting the ball in the air more versus, I mean, the ground ball rate just dropped, and it was really good to see that. And even now, I understand that the offense will come, but at the plate, I think it's more important for him to call a good game. Speaking of calling a good game, we had a good question here from Tim. A quick Jackson Jobe summary. What to expect from Jobe, who will be who got called up. Shelby Miller was designated for assignment, but Bobby, Jackson Jobe throwing 100 miles an hour in spring training was, eye-opening. We saw that the Tigers, the way they've been using their bullpen the last month or so, which is something that we can go on. We've touched on earlier, but how excited are you for Jackson Jobe to take the mound in the next couple of days?
Well, it's exciting. I mean, I in fairness, I have not seen very much of him. I've tried to catch a couple games when I wasn't on the call, with the big league club. But man, you see, 100 is not easy to come by. You feel like everybody throws 100 in abilities now, but they don't. There's only still a few guys that are running it up there, 101, 102. And what I'm impressed with in limited looks I have seen is that the relative lack of effort to do it. I mean, there's more in there, and the biggest thing he's going to have to do is got to throw it over the plate. I don't care what anybody says at any level. You got to throw it over the plate. You can't defend a walk. And that's one thing that this staff has done a really, really, really good job of throwing the baseball over. Walk rates are low across the board with all the pitchers that totally up for the Tigers. 100 with the slider is enough to get guys out in the major leagues if you throw it over. If you don't throw it over and you get behind the count, it gets ugly in a hurry, and it gets loud in a hurry. So I think one thing AJ has done an unreal job of doing, and Chris Fetter and Juan Nieves and Dr. Robin Lund, of teaming together, getting those guys together and figuring out a way where do these guys fit as far as what pocket can I get them in that's going to give them the best opportunity for success. That is the number one thing that AJ has done this year. And the rest of that staff have done. And so certainly they're going to set him up, put him in a situation where, this pocket right here, Jackson, this is what we need to do. Do your thing. This is where we're going to get you. You do X, Y, Z, then we'll go get you out. And that's your role today. And they will put him in a situation for him to succeed. They're not going to set this guy up, bring him up at this point to set him up to fail. I can tell you right now, there's 6 games to go in this season. All you got to do is win one more than Minnesota, then you're in. If they didn't believe he could help this team right now, he wouldn't be here.
Mm-hmm. That's what, when you were talking about guys entering the league with their ceiling so much higher than it used to be. I immediately thought of Jobe because he's got a cathedral ceiling, man. And
sure.
And he's still right now, it's just kind of a collection of electric pitches and some basic command, but it's just like, you know what? He needs the polish at the highest level.
Mm-hmm.
And he's just going to go out there and probably let it eat for an inning. And that's probably going to make him, he probably has the best pure arm in the org, maybe behind Tarek Skubal, if Skubal's proven it. So it's going to be fun to just let a guy go out there and use his natural talent. And my dream actually is for him to go out there and maybe pitch in relief tomorrow, and then they clinch the playoff spot, and then he gets a start against the White Sox in the final day of the season. Just turn the final day into a big Jackson Jobe party.
That'd be cool. I mean, that'd be cool. That would. I've got those last 3 games. I'm not going to be there for the Tampa series. I've got those last 3 games, so I would be fine with that, to get a chance to see it up close and personal. Hopefully I get to see it a lot more in seasons to come for a long time. But look, the funny part was, people said, at certain times, like for instance, when Parker Meadows went down early in the season, get a chance to see more lefties in the minor leagues. And even it was funny because they were talking about Jackson Holiday early in the season. He needed to go down and see more lefties in the minor leagues. All the lefties you want to face are in the big leagues. Mm-hmm. So it comes to a point where you don't have anything else to prove down there. and certainly they feel that way with Jobe, and his next step is to be productive here. And like I said, the biggest thing that they're going to do for sure is they're going to put him in pockets to succeed right now. There's going to be times next year for him to take his lumps, because he's going to have to, because you have to go through those struggles to get the ultimate, to the yeah, I mean, it's that's why this development piece at the major league level is key. And right now, I'm certainly not betting against what these guys are doing, because they're getting it done. I mean, it doesn't matter who they brought up; it's been magic, and it hasn't been magic. I need to stop saying that it hasn't been magic. They've engineered this.
Yeah,
they've engineered this,
yeah.
And then they put these guys into positions to succeed. And credit to the guys, they've executed. So no, it's not magic. It's been engineered, and all the outcomes haven't been perfect, but the process has been very sound. And if your process is sound, the results will come. The results will be what they're supposed to be, and that's what we're seeing right now.
And it's that whole run prevention engine. It's not just the pitching. Something I've been explaining to people a lot. Like, you can look through the Tigers bullpen, who they've got in the rotation. It's not like there's a ton of strikeout artists, like top tier strikeout artists. And we've kind of come to look for that the last, 5 to 10 years in the game. But, the way they play defense, the way they prevent extra base hits in the outfield, defensive positioning, pitching to the defense, matching the defense to the pitching. It's a combined, integrated effort that, has just been kind of mind blowing to watch come together like this, especially in the second half here. Haven't seen it much like this, Bobby.
I missed you guys. I'm sorry, I cut out a little bit.
Oh, it's all right. I'm just talking about the, just that integrated, all facets of run prevention, working together. Not just the guy on the with the baseball card. It's everybody out there. The analysts, defensive positioning, the whole thing.
Yep, everything. No, and that's real. And listen, at the end of the day, so there was a point in time in our game where the data was the differentiator. I mean, you look at this data revolution in baseball in terms of just advanced information. This started, Moneyball, the movie, came out in 2011. I was in Japan. I remember watching the movie in Japan, in the English language theater in Japan. It came out in 2011. The book was written in 2002 or 2003, if I'm not mistaken. And really, the analytics revolution started probably 97, 98-ish. We're 20 years deep in this thing. This ain't new. So data is not the separator anymore. It's the application of the data by the teams. When I say team, it's each individual team. It's the members of the team behind the scenes that nobody knows who they are, who's running all these numbers. Yeah. If AJ or George Lombard goes into the question, hey, what does it look if we did XYZ? Boom, they can bring up certain things. Okay, it's the advancement. I'm not a part of any of this, so don't. I'm just saying this, but
in general,
what goes on in those advanced meetings, right? It's a guy like Gary Jones, who had AJ as a AAA player, had me as a AA player, had Matt Vierling as a AAA player, whose wealth of knowledge in the game with these, which is a form of data, over 40 years in this game, it's the input that he has into the mix. Right? It's George with his experience. It's all of those coaches, and it's a mix of the data. And then it's a mix of, okay, we have this athlete that can do this. Let's put him in this situation here. It's the same on the pitching staff. We have 3, 4, 5 over there, a bunch of guys with upward plane swings. Let's match these shapes. For these shapes work. Like, you may have a guy, okay, traditionally there's some pretty good numbers out there, but the way Jason Foley's sinker acts against these guys' swing shapes, we got an advantage here. Let's use that. It's all of that.
Yeah.
It's all of that. But at the end of the day, these guys have got to execute. And so they've done such a great job of doing that. It's been so fun to watch and be a part of. Watching the whole machine work and just being a little bit closer to the situation. I'm not in it, like I said, but this closer to the situation, it's been really cool to watch these guys work.
All right, and the last question we had from our audience was it was a U of M question. A gentleman from Tennessee, he wanted to know if you were there when Freehand was coaching. So he was just kind of curious if you got the chance to run into Bill Freehand, the former Tiger great.
Yeah, Coach Freehand recruited my whole group. I was not one of those he actually recruited. I was a walk-on. That's a whole different story for another time. I was a complete walk-on up there and asked for an opportunity to play, and Coach Freehand actually gave me that opportunity. And the guy named Ace Adams, who was recruiting coordinator and pitching coach at the time. But Coach Freehand retired in July before my group got there. So we played for Jeff Zahn for 4 years, old left-handed pitcher. Think 12 or 13 years in the big leagues. But it was great. I mean, we won, 2 Big Ten championships while we were there and had a bunch of fun. And, JJ Putz was on that team, longtime big leaguer. Mike Cervenak got some time with the Phillies on that 08 team. So he's got a World Series ring. So it was good guys. Right. Like I said, Coach Ryan Kelly, the head coach at Wayne State was a pitcher for us on that team. So it was great. We had a great time. And so you got to remember too. So I'm 47. I'll be 47 in 2 weeks. So that's the Brady, Woodson, Steve Hutchinson, era too. So, hockey was killing it too. Turco,
that's right,
standing on his head between the pipes. It was a fun time up there. It was a really good time.
Yeah,
trailer.
Yeah, track trailer. And then I was thinking about, because you won the Bob Uecker award.
Yeah.
And I always think about every time I think about Uecker, I just think of the horn. He would do it every touchdown.
Yeah.
And it's just like, so I was wondering if you ever, does that happen when you get the trophy around like that? Horn is like, the honk cracks me up every single time.
Yeah, that's it's funny. And I don't usually brag on myself. That award, it's about spirit and dedication to the University of Michigan as a student athlete. And I'm proud of that one. I am. They give it to one senior year. I am proud of that one because I born in Detroit, moved away, went back there to school. The only goal I ever had in my life is I wanted to play football at Michigan, but leaving high school at 5'10", that wasn't going to happen. So, but I was able to suit up for Michigan for 4 years and get a degree from there. And I really love and enjoyed that place. And it means a lot to me. It still means a lot to me every day. I sit on a board in the Division of the School of Sport Management up there to this day. It's a special place for me. And so, leaving school at that point, getting that award my senior year was a very special thing to me. So it was fun. Good time.
Outstanding.
Awesome. All right. So you're going to be for the series for the White Sox. Bobby, thank you so much for taking the time to talk some development with us. This was a very good conversation. Everybody on the chat, thank you for the questions. And we'll look forward. We'll be down there at the ballpark this weekend. Look forward to talking some shop. Give some hopefully Greg giving Greg some more grief because he always likes to bust my butt. So hopefully we can do the same for Greg there. But you guys do a really good job every time that he's on there. So great work, Bobby. We appreciate it.
I appreciate it. No, it's been fun. It's been fun working with the legend Dan Dickerson. He's tremendous. And then, working with Greg is unbelievable too. He's been great for my development, just getting a different style of a play-by-play man. But he's tremendous and he's a good friend. It's been great. It really has. And y'all come to the game, bring a friend. Turn Comerica up. We got to get this place turned up, man. Show up. What up, though? Let's go.
Yeah, go tomorrow. It's a day game now.
Yeah, it's a 1:00 game tomorrow. There's no excuse. And, look, I mean, for all my
unless you're working, I guess. But
I mean, even for my U of M Dearborn peeps out there, everybody that I know that is, slacking off out there who's working from home. I know what you guys are doing. Like, hey, come on, let's go.
Listen, we're all remote. Like, turn your camera off, take the meeting from left field. It's fine. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, there you go.
I don't understand. It's been a decade.
Yeah, or like just say like, I have a signal, or like what I might do tomorrow. Well, I'm not gonna tell everybody. Well, no, my boss might be watching. But Bobby, thank you again so much, and look forward to seeing you this weekend, man.
You bet. I'll be down there. It's gonna be fun.
All right.
All right, take it easy, man.
Have a good one.
Have a good night. Thank you.
Thanks, Bobby. All right. So Bobby Scales, man.
Thanks for saving Dan Dickerson for that. Thanks for saving Dan Dickerson from that foul ball the other day too.
Oh, dude, I was trying to get Sean's question in there, man.
Yeah,
that was awesome. He did like a G2. He's like,
no problem.
Like got it. So I noticed his Liverpool soccer flag or his scarf thing, and I have the Wandering Wolves up there on mine. Oh, great conversation with Bobby, and this was kind of like one of those things where he's the right guy for this kind of conversation about what the Tigers have done development. Because I mean, here we are looking at like Jace Young. We know, for example, that he has struggled at third a little bit, but then he makes a play like that where he shows the athletic ability, what the Tigers saw in him to play at third base in the first place. So those are the kind of things where the development wins. But the biggest thing that let's get back to Jacksonville for a second.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting.
What? Like, just here we are. Like, you know what? I seriously think that like Scott Harris is the Emperor Palpatine from Star Wars, just because he's just like,
I've got something for you.
Well, so the thing, we've had people ask us, and I'm sure you have, Brandon, all year. Hey, when are they going to call Jackson Jobe up? When are they going to call him up? And we talked about it a couple of weeks ago. So like, hey, just call him up. And it was like, all right, well, trying to get in their mindset and goes, well, it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense given where they are in the season right now. Like, what benefit is it for Jackson Jobe to come up? And I'm sure it won't hurt, but it also doesn't change things much. And then they turned into a playoff team, and they're like, well, you know what?
Yeah.
You know what? Maybe we should use like one of the two best arms in our system, and just have them throw an inning or two. And talk about an exciting time for Tigers fans. Good Lord.
Yeah. I mean, Scott Harris wasn't lying. He said he needed to go to Toledo. I mean, we might have wanted him to go to Toledo in July, but they got it done eventually. So I'm just stoked to see it. I just want to see it. So yeah, very exciting. Very exciting news. Something that Bobby kept going back to. Speaks to something we talk all the time about. In evaluating the farm system is, guys who are getting better. Like you can look at a guy and say, okay, he's got all these weaknesses, but if he keeps shoring up other weaknesses, if things are getting better, you want to give that guy a lot more leash, and you can see a lot more, of a future for a player that keeps making these adjustments. This is one of the reasons why I'm still pretty high on Troy Melton. Didn't necessarily have that great a year, but if you look at what Troy Melton was coming out of college to how he, what he is now, it's like, it's worlds difference. So yeah. So when we're talking aptitude, that's a guy who can take that information and apply it. So yeah, that was a cool conversation. I could have talked to Bobby for a long time. I wanted to ask him about him and Will Rhymes and why it is that scrappy, utility players who don't necessarily have the biggest tools end up being the best guys in player development.
I think
probably because they had to do it themselves.
Yeah, I was just gonna say
they had to work better a good pitching coach, right?
Yeah, or the most approved.
Yeah.
I mean, like maybe that's what it is. They had the most, the biggest chip on the shoulder because of the size. Like Will Rhymes, like when he was a small guy, and I mean maybe that's what it is. It's just like I don't want to say overcompensate, but they have that big D energy. I mean they come in and know their stuff, and and
they know they've got to wring every bit of talent out. They've got to get all the talent out. As opposed to like Miguel Cabrera can at 90% talent is still going to kick everybody's butt. So yeah,
no, and I think that speaks a little bit to what we were when we were talking to him about scouts and finding the makeup in guys, where one of the hardest things to do, and we've talked about this before, is find those guys who just won't relent. And a lot of times,
dogs.
And sometimes the dogs are Will Rhymes and Bobby Scales, and they don't necessarily have like the best baseball tools in the world, but they still get to the big leagues because they're going above and beyond their raw ability. And then every now and then you get a JD Martinez or a Justin Turner or whatever who doesn't give up. They're in the big leagues because they have this physical talent and it's not working out, and they don't let that stop them, and they go out and change and do whatever they can, and then they figure it out. And finding those makeup guys is really I think the key to winning baseball at times, and maybe the Tigers have one of those guys in Kerry Carpenter. He's a guy that went and changed the swing. So I don't know. It's and we've seen.
Well, and that's another thing we talk about is how the guys who are already good often are the ones who are least likely to be able to make those changes. When you're kind of doing okay, it's so much harder to throw everything out and start from scratch than when you're desperate.
Well, and to bring this back to Jackson Jobe, he was obviously a supremely talented young man, had this, insane spin rate, this big fastball, goes out in his first pro season and it is just kind of pedestrian. He gives up a bunch of home runs.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, he's fine. He's showing flashes. So what's he do in the offseason? And he gets hurt. But then in the whole time, he fixes his fastball shape. He adds a cutter.
Mm-hmm.
He improves the changeup. And so he comes back and he's an absolute monster last year. And it's like, okay, well, that's a pretty good makeup right there. Hopefully. Now, you know, that's you got to keep doing it at higher levels, but that's a good sign, I think.
Yeah. And it kind of, you know, spoke to what we were talking about this summer. Like, you know, he just didn't look like he was having to work for it that hard at Erie. So you just want to see him challenged and, you know, and have to do something else, you know, and kind of fight through some things.
And speaking of fighting through things, I mean, you look at the Erie with the way they are right now, they are about to clinch their second straight Eastern League championship. They're heading out to Somerset tomorrow.
Oh, yeah.
And we'll probably be doing like a live broadcast kind of thing like we've been doing. But this is a team that shows like Gabe Alvarez has done a very good job of managing his bullpen. Wakil Hernandez struggled yesterday, came out, and the bullpen did a very good job. Sylvia came in, who they acquired from the Giants. He's been a pretty good arm since in the Marcana trade. Did a really good job. RJ Pettit's been doing good. They've just been getting contributions from guys that you're going, who? I mean, even this, the singular, I'm trying to think of the guy who was pitching the ninth last night, who they picked up from the Phillies system.
Sillinger?
Yeah, Sillinger. Yeah, that guy has been really good. It's just been, but Chris Myers, former shortstop and left field defensive guru wizard thing. It was just so every guy's been stepping up.
What a play.
What a play. I mean, he did it not once, but then twice. He did it again yesterday. And it's just it's a different guy every night.
I wouldn't have known that if Fernando hadn't told you.
Oh yeah, Fernando. Thank you, Fernando. Gracias, Fernando. No, but like I just look. I mean, Austin Murr, he had a big clutch hit Friday. This is a team that does not quit, and so the philosophy, what he was talking about with what Bobby Scales was talking about, I think is still you still see it in. You saw it with Lakeland too. Lakeland was a prime another, you know, like Jose De La Cruz, who we've kind of forgotten about, was like, you know what? Let's go hit 500-foot bombs. No big deal. You know, Jose Porceño.
Let me just do this.
Yeah, let me just do. Yeah, and Jose Porceño's hitting triples, and then you have Jack Penny coming off, and so there's something that I think that if there's one thing about this year, more so than the last few years that I've noticed across the system that is coming up with the Tigers, is that dog don't like, you know, they don't quit attitude. And it's really the position versatility is the thing, but it's like this attitude of like, no, I'm going to prove you wrong.
Yeah. I keep thinking, as we're talking, okay, so probably Carlos Mendoza is going to be an excellent player development guy someday.
Yeah.
You know, that seems like the guy. And they need some guys to hit because, you know, no one wants to pitch to Gage Workman right now, you know, 3 intentional walks the other night. I was like, oh, okay. They're scared to death of this man now. That was cool.
Yeah. You know, it's oddly enough,
a development story.
So 2 years ago, when we went out to Erie to watch their first playoff game in I don't know, 15 years or so, and they were playing Somerset, right, at home. Yeah, I believe that was Somerset. No, but I guess that wouldn't have been
it was Somerset, yeah.
But I guess that wouldn't have been their first playoff game. Whatever, it was the first game of the championship series, right?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was after they beat Richmond. Yeah, on the road.
Yeah. In that game, they intentionally walked Workman, I think, or you know what they did? No, it wasn't an intentional walk. They specifically, at least once, maybe twice, brought in a left-handed pitcher to make him hit right-handed because he was so much worse as a right-handed. Like they were like, we don't want to face this guy because he almost had he had a monster home run in that game, and then he ended up getting a hit as a right-handed hitter. And it was like, yeah, when he is on, he scares the hell out of opposing managers. We talked about it 2 years ago. We talked about it last year, and it's back now where, yeah, like they're not like, we're not going to let this dude beat us. And yeah, like that was a good point. And you brought up Mendoza. I mean, he had a monster game. Was it 4 for 5? You said, Raj?
Yeah, 4 for 5. Yeah.
Yeah. Just and that's just
double and a triple. I think. Yeah.
Double and a triple. Yeah, and a single. Yeah.
It's just been kind of the way that Erie has been all year, man. It's like, you know, that they have these players who seem to be carrying them, and then they, for whatever reason, they're gone. You know, Hayuli gets hurt. You know, Jackson Jobe gets promoted. Melton gets hurt. All these guys, they're carrying them. Jake Holton gets hurt, and somebody else steps up.
Cruz.
And Trey Cruz. Yeah, so now they're 1 win away from their second consecutive championship, and who knows who's going to be the hero? It could be Brady Allen. It could be it could be Peyton Graham. I don't know, but it's been really fun to watch.
I mean, who knows?
Yeah.
Yep.
And they just they go out there, and I think I saw today that the Tigers had the best record overall for farm system in all of baseball. Put all their teams together, and they were number one this year, which is
and we used to talk about that where you could kind of game the system. Yeah, let's hear it. That you can kind of game the system with older players and that kind of thing. The Tigers aren't really doing that. And, when you're doing it kind of the right way, it does mean something when your farm system, is this good, consistently. And the fact that Lakeland was, one of the best teams in the first half and then lost all their good players to West Michigan. And then they were even better in the second half. You're like, okay, I'm feeling pretty good about the future, boys.
Yeah, and Erie is kind of the one team in the system that is they're not gaming the system, right? They just have a bunch of old veteran guys, and it's just the way it worked out, where a lot of the prospects kind of moved on or were in lower levels. But Raj and I talked about this the other day, where Brandon Herter and Ty Madden got real important playoff experience with AA in the last 2 seasons, and we think it's about as close as you can get to the big leagues without going to the big leagues, right? That kind of pressure in these games that matter. And I think that means something. And I think the Tigers organization believes it means something, because they've been, leaps and bounds better overall over the last 3 seasons than they were before that.
Yeah. And that's why we all kind of like perked up when they promoted Jobe. Like we thought, for sure the reason they'd kept him down there was to pitch in the postseason. Well, guess what? That is the reason. But a different postseason.
And that's where, here's where the Tigers are in terms of controlling their destiny too. They just have to go, as we two said, 4-2 down the stretch. They're a game above Minnesota to tie with the Royals. And right now, if the playoff start began today, they would play Houston. That's how the way it would work out right now. And speaking of the pitching staff too, one last thing I wanted to address was Casey Mize is not getting the start, getting passed over a little bit. And again, it kind of goes back to what the Tigers were doing before. They kept him on the IL a little longer. He is up for arbitration. I believe he could be a free agent coming up, I believe. And I don't know, like between him and Matt Manning, it just seems like, and even the Shelby Miller thing, I don't know what to make of the Mize thing. I thought Mize pitched okay when he stayed away from his slider. He has had better swings and misses. The advanced metrics show a little different, but gentlemen, I'll start with you, Brandon. Do you think he's just going to go out of the bullpen then, and they're just going to max him out, or what do you think is going on with him? Because I don't know.
Yeah, I really don't know either, because it's not like there's no like workload reasons. It's his first year back from Tommy John, but he had the injury, hasn't thrown that many innings. I actually thought he looked better last time out, and that the slider looked better because he was just kind of throwing it harder, and it was kind of more of that like old hard cutter that kind of plays off the fastball rather than the slightly slower slider that they seem to be picking up. So I actually thought he looked, about as good as he has this year, and he was getting the whiffs, but just still getting hit hard. And you have to wonder, I don't really wonder about like Casey Mize's like makeup that much, because Casey Mize seems to work really hard. Casey Mize seems like really, really fluent in the data and could probably coach himself. He seems driven. I don't really think any of those things come up, but you do have to wonder with both him and Manning that, these are the prior regime's guys, and, it hasn't worked out for them. And, maybe there was a big switch in what they, the newer staff wants them to do than the old staff. And they might've seen like 3 or 4 editions of that. We talked about that, back in the Nick Castellanos days, how Nick Castellanos talked about this. Like every time I went to a new level, there was some new coach, like, hey, change everything. And you just start tuning them out. And, is that the issue? I don't really think so, because I think they're both smart enough to realize that, Fetter, London, Nieves is as good a group of pitching coaches as you're going to find. Doug Bachler seems to be a pretty good pitching coach at Toledo, who's done some nice work bringing those guys along. So it's just kind of a mystery bag, it seems pretty clear they're not going to start Casey unless, maybe like the last game of the season or something. I would love to see him start Joe, but I don't think they're going to. But maybe they're just kind of like, yeah, we're going to pitch him as a bulk reliever too, and I guess why not? Brant Herter's been better than Casey Mize has, and Ty Madden's been at least as good. So maybe just implementing him into that strategy that they've been kind of using the last 2 months is just the way to go right now, and then maybe they'll reevaluate next year. But I think we all have a little bit of the feeling of like, yeah, is the org sour on Casey Mize, or or is it just that we're used to Casey Mize being important and the org is now treating him as what he is, which is just a kind of a back end arm, that doesn't really have a breaking ball. And, maybe that's it. Maybe that's the shock to it, is that, he was 1-1 and now they're like, we'll see what he can do and how he fits into our plans, but he's not a priority. And I guess, that's where it's at now.
Yeah, just kind of digging into his numbers a little bit. And I agree with you, basically everything you said, Brandon, about, he's a guy that I've never worried about his makeup, never worried about his desire to get better, never worried about any of that, never worried about his aptitude for picking up on things. I think his stuff just might not be great. Like he might just not be able to do certain things. And when I was looking at his numbers, he's been significantly better against left-handers than right-handed batters, which is interesting. And that's kind of what Shelby Miller was, right? Like, who, dearly departed. Yeah. And Mize is actually a pretty reliable ground ball pitcher. He's getting a higher rate of ground balls than Jason Foley, for example. So I wonder if they might just use him out of the bullpen. And we've seen him touch 98 this year. Go out there and throw as hard as you can. Just try to, if it's a situation where we need a ground ball, we bring in Casey Mize. Maybe it's a lefty, or that they'll pinch hit with a left-hander, and he comes in and he's kind of a Jason Foley-ish reliever out there to get you a ground ball late in the innings. It's in a playoff scenario. And then in the future, I don't know if what they can work on. But yeah, it's I'm out of answers there, and I'm sure they've been trying a lot.
Yeah, the splitter is like decent now when he doesn't hang it. Like the splitter seems to have found a little something there at least. But he's basically like a good fastball pitcher with not that much else. Casey Mize, you wouldn't think it to look at him, but he has like 7.2 feet of extension, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And if he's airing it out 98 with Ride out of the bullpen, I mean that's a power fastball right there. And the kind that they don't really have, because Foley can throw that hard, but Foley's got more of the two-seam sink going, and Casey can kind of buzz the tower up there with high four-seamer. So maybe that's a different look that they use as well. Something to go back to Jobe. Something I had wondered about was what his extension was exactly, and my heart broke just a little bit to see that it was just 6 feet today. Yeah. And looking through the Toledo data, like I knew it wasn't great, but I also knew they'd been working on it, and I was kind of hoping it was a little higher. But that might explain why the fastball plays down, based on its velocity, to more of like an above average fastball rather than like a dominant kick ass, 98, 99 mile per hour Justin Verlander type fastball. Anyway.
Yeah. And
unfortunate aside.
Well, but as we talked about, it still doesn't necessarily get hit terribly hard unless he's putting it, when he throws it, what happens is it's a bunch of foul balls. Which is not great, but I don't know. Yeah, you hope that they can tweak that or figure something out down the road. But yeah, just looking more at Mize, it looks like he only throws his sinker. He never throws his sinker to left-handed batters, and he only throws it up, which is an interesting quirk about him. But anyway, like I don't know. I think it's a good arm, and you might as well give him a shot to throw bullets out of the bullpen, like you said, just see what happens, because maybe they find something there. But people are also talking about Matt Manning, and Matt Manning, we're not hearing a peep about Matt Manning coming back. He pitched in Toledo on the final day of the season. They called up Jackson Jobe instead. Like we've kind of touched on this before, and I think I mentioned it. Generally speaking, I think, and I've never been in an MLB front office, but you get the idea that the general manager makes the call usually on the first pick, or if you have a couple first rounders, the general manager kind of has the veto power on that, right?
Yeah.
And then after that, it's up to your scouting director and your scouting org and stuff like that. And you go back and you look at the first round picks made by Al Avila, and it's not terribly encouraging. Now, a lot of what's been going on good with this organization and this team has been picks during the Avila era, but they were all taken in later rounds. Colt Keith was a 5th rounder. Parker Meadows a 2nd rounder. Now, I do know that Al Avila scouted Parker Meadows personally, right? But but still, Matt Manning, Alex Faedo, Casey Mize, Spencer Torkelson, Jace Young, we still don't know.
Daniel Cabrera,
as opposed to Kerry Carpenter, Tarek Skubal, like the guys who
Yeah.
are, Riley Green. You got to give, okay, we
Yeah,
got
you
Big Al, but Al probably knew Riley Green like everybody in Florida did,
Yeah.
like
Well,
Al
yeah, I
was
mean, they're
no doubt intimately familiar with Riley Green.
their area scout or their East Coast cross checker, right? Was like Riley Green's neighbor.
Yeah.
Like it was just one of those things. Like, oh, hey, go borrow some milk.
But knowing full well that the athletic department wanted to draft Zach Nato, I wanted them to draft Zach Nato, and Avila's like, nah.
Well,
that to this day, that's the one I'm just like, that's the one I'm like,
I don't know. Could the Tigers use a shortstop who has 24
go to a big
steals?
school?
Sure.
Yeah, well,
yeah,
anyway,
it's just the way it goes. But anyway,
baseball. We have
the
wild card baseball, ladies and gentlemen. We have wild card meaningful baseball this week. The Tigers.
Every one of these games is
a playoff game. We don't have the wild card yet. We got to be careful with the verbiage. Let's not jinx anything. But I'm feeling pretty good. Yeah, I have to admit.
That's Dan Fernandez said it would be interesting to see if Mize could be Fulmer 2.0 in the bullpen. That's an interesting comparison. Fulmer always had that dastardly slider though, which would be nice. But yeah, maybe if Mize is just airing out the fastball, that split comes too, and I don't know if he could just focus on those two pitches, then that might be kind of fun. But again, it kind of makes him Shelby Miller.
You know what? If
he throwing harder.
But harder throwing,
yeah.
Or you utilizing the knuckle curve, because when he throws a knuckle curve, that's a pretty good effective pitch. Like same thing with like Montero. So if you can get that going too with that, I think you can team up with the fastball, change eye levels with that with the knuckle curveball. So, as far as just
as a starter at least, but it just seems like as a reliever, they're just going to be as simple as they can be. Like it's probably just going to be two pitches, go get him, kid.
Mm-hmm.
But I agree, as a starter, like mixing in that knuckle curve, is a nice change of pace for him, and at least gives him another wrinkle. I think Cater kind of got a little bit knuckle curve happy in the last outing, and I kind of wish he'd just, just keep working on dominating with the fastball and spotting that thing on both sides of the plate a little bit more. Because when you start knowing, we've talked about this with Jobe a little bit. Sometimes like the stuff is high spin and it moves a lot, but sometimes it's, it's obvious when you start seeing it a lot. You're like, okay, this kid's just going to spam this friggin' slider at me, and as soon as he puts one, knee high, I'm going to kill it. So, I thought they kind of went to the well a little bit in his last outing, a little bit too much with the curve. I was screaming about.
Was it 4 home runs he allowed?
4 homers, yeah. No, I think in Montero and Jobe are kind of good comparisons, because I do think that Montero's slider and knuckle curve work best when he's mixing them, because they kind of look similar. One's just a little harder. And I think with Jobe, when he's using his cutter and slider or sweeper in conjunction, I think that helps him too, because sometimes he'll, as you said, that sweeper moves so much that right-handed batters can they spot it and it's starting middle of the plate. They just kind of let it go because they know it's not.
Yeah.
So, if he aims it at them and then cuts it over the front part of the plate, that's a good pitch for him. But then other than that, and he doesn't seem to use it against lefties. Like it's not a back foot slider for him. You don't want to use a sweeper that often against left-handed hitters. So that cutter becomes a really important pitch for him. But I do think, and that's just stuff that I guess you get more used to, right? Really learning how to tunnel these pitches together and play them off each other at the highest level. Sometimes you have to go out there and give up 4 home runs to go, okay, maybe that's not going to work, but they can work on it.
Yeah, the only time it's even like Madden too. Madden, prime example, that was yesterday. He started getting that when we see every time, like he started getting that up, like, get tattooed with that.
Mix it up, bro.
That's the thing. Like
one thing I was going to bring that back to. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Okay, I was going to say, I was just going to bring it back to Jobe for a second. That there was that one at bat. Was it Milan Tolentino? I think it was on when in his last start with Toledo, which was Friday? Yeah, Friday.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just that kind of classic thing where it was like, fastball down the middle, got fouled off. Good fastball up and in, got ahead of him, and now it's 0-2. And what happens? 2 pitches right down the freaking gut, and you can't do that in the major leagues. And that's that thing that we've been talking about, where there's just sort of an abandon there, where it's like, well, I threw a strike, and it's like, nah, that ain't gonna work, But at Erie, most of those guys would just foul those off as well, and then eventually ground out or something like that. But yeah, you start seeing those guys who are really going to hurt you in swing counts if you make mistakes over the plate like that. So that'll be something to watch for, for him. I'm sure he'll take his lumps, but pitching in relief and being able to air it out, and them kind of, no doubt, using them selectively, as Bobby, talked about, will probably alleviate some of that. It's pretty hard to argue with Chris freaking Fetter right now. Like, do your thing, bro. I don't know. I can't do that.
Yeah, we could. I mean, the good thing about Jobe and working out of relief, if we expect is that the changeup comes with him just about every start. It's a really nasty changeup, and if they try to bring in lefties to face him, it'll be like, okay, whatever. It's just a matter, like you said, he needs to learn that. It's just kind of a higher level of concentration, right? And at the highest point, you've got to be locked in from every pitch. And we see, even great pitchers like Tarek Skubal. Well, you don't think about it, but you're like, okay, I can. The game plan is this guy's probably going to be expecting a slider here or a changeup here, so I can sneak this fastball by him. And every now and then, nope, it's like a 93-mile-an-hour fastball, and they're waiting on it, and they hit it out. And you go, okay, well, I just didn't have my full concentration there. And so that's what. It just takes years to happen. Like, it's really rare for young pitchers to come up and just absolutely dominate, like a Paul Skeens, right? We saw it with Verlander. We've seen it with Skubal. It takes a few years for that natural talent and that and just kind of the mentality to meld until they make them an ace level pitcher. And Jobe has that ceiling. It's just going to take a little while, but it's certainly going to be fun to just watch him throw.
So if you if you want to go to our website, Tigers, I'll put in the chat here, TigerReport.com. Chris put the scouting report for Jackson Jobe as he's their number one prospect. So this will be the third number one prospect was made his from our list. It's made his debut this year.
I think. Well, I was thinking about our I don't know if we have it, but our top 30 from before the season and all the players. Yes. So Keith was 1, Jobe was 2, I think. I think we had Meadows 3rd. Am I missing somebody?
So let's go back to
maybe it was Clark 3rd and Meadows 4th.
Go back to version 3.0. Yeah,
I can't remember. You might have had McGonigal in there. I felt like you guys were pretty on the McGonigal train early too, but I can't remember. I can't remember your list. I can't remember my list.
But just thinking about all the prospects from like their top 15, top 20 this year. You had Montero, Madden, Herder, Dingler, Winsell, Perez. Basically, we got everybody. I think from our top 20, basically, except like Eddie's Leonard, who finished the season with a bang. Toledo hit 5 home runs as a team this week, and he hit 4 of them. But
and they were just basically a lot of them. Yeah.
Anybody who was at like even at I want to say AA or better has basically come up, right? We can't even think of
pretty much other than like Bigby, Leonard, But neither of them was expected to be like a starting style player necessarily. Do you want to hit that question that you had popped up? Stando, concerning Manning and Mize, do you think part of the problem is that they only have 2 professional grade pitches each? Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. Like, I mean, the problem is that neither one of them has a good breaking ball. I mean, just fundamentally, like Manning's sweeperish thing has gotten better, but it's still not that good. And Mize just has never really spun a good breaking ball. There was a time, remember when it was probably 2019, 2020, Mize was throwing like a 91, 92 mile per hour cutter. And I loved it because he just couldn't spin anything else. But for some reason, they kind of went away from it. And the slider he had in 21 was at least effective. But I don't know. I just don't see it now. And I mean, I think that's pretty much what it comes down to is that they're, at best 2 pitch, pitchers. Manning threw a bunch of splits the other day. And that was, kind of good to see that he was kind of aggressively using it. And he was throwing 95, 96, pretty much the whole outing. And that's kind of positive. But it's just like, how long do you go,
Yeah. And I guess there's one thing, I think we've touched on this a little bit before, but this group of pitching coaches seems particularly adept at helping guys with changeups and sinkers and things you can use seam shifted wake on, just like that, but not necessarily helping guys with spinning a slider or a curveball better. No, I think they helped refine Jack Flaherty's, I guess, arsenal, but I don't think they like added anything, right? And it may just be that we're at a place where you either can spin it or you can't, right? And but what you can do is you can alter your grips on a fastball and on a changeup to change those. But I don't know. I'm not in there in the trenches to know what they're doing. But we even see like Bo Brisky, forever and ever they've been trying to get him a breaking ball, and it's just like, it's just not going to work. I mean, he's got one, but it's nothing special.
Yeah, Foley's got kind of a crude one finally, but it's still not particularly good. Yeah, I mean it feels like what they're really good at is preventing home runs, like teaching guys to and that's the shifted weight, seam shifted weight magic, is that you just the pitch just moves an inch or two in an opposite direction from where the spin tells the hitter it should go, and it's not like you get whiffs necessarily, but it's just they're just hard to barrel up. It's just those guys that late movement. Love you, Jim Price. It just moves off that barrel a little bit, and they seem to be really pretty good with that. And obviously, guys, we know you don't necessarily have to have a super high spin rate to throw a really good slider. It does help. It does simplify things because otherwise you're throwing more of a hard gyro slider, and you better throw the crap out of those. Scooble throws it 90, 91, and he can't spin anything either. And that's why that's part of why that pitch is semi-effective. Helps to have maybe the best changeup in the game and 100 in the tank, of course, but it's all of a piece. All your pitches look better when you've got two 70 grade ones to base the other ones around. But it's an interesting subject because that does seem to be kind of the specialty there as far as pitch design. Much more of what the Tigers seem to be really good at is the whole thing, like calling the game, knowing all the hitters' tendencies, sequencing the crap out of them, positioning the defense perfectly, doing all that stuff, putting the right guy in against the right, the pocket of the lineup, I guess is what we're calling it now. AJ loves that now. It's one thing that's funny. AJ's terminology has finally taken over. Like, people resisted it, but now I hear people, using his terms for everything.
Talking about shapes.
Yeah.
Nobody talks about their different pitches. They talk about their different shapes. Yeah. Like they're,
He's working on shapes.
Back in kindergarten.
I haven't seen him smile this much I haven't seen him smile this much ever. Yeah. By the way.
I mean, it's hard not to just sit back and really have a lot of fun with this. It's one thing to compete. It's another thing to
smile this much.
Yeah. It's another thing to do it kind of out of nowhere on the backs of just a bunch of really young kids. And then this guy that we thought had Cy Young potential after dominating last year, and then he went out and did it. Just there's a lot of really fun things going right for the Tigers right now, and it's still only 82 wins right now. It's not like they're dominant. Their offense still needs a lot of help. There's a lot of stuff to do in the offseason, but I each time I think about that, I just get upset that I'm not paying more attention to what is going on right now, because you don't get this very often, and it's a lot of fun, and you should just appreciate it and enjoy every game.
You're right.
Especially and AJ's pushing the buttons. Everything everything he touches is turned into gold. He pinch hits, you hate it, they get a hit, or they pinch hit Malloy for Carpenter and he draws a walk or gets hit, and you're like, okay, you just can't argue. You can't argue with AJ right now. It's just all coming to faces, man.
Yeah,
get that
the idea, and I like what Dan said here. The idea of managing matchups in all innings is pretty interesting, and it is. I mean, I look. If there's one thing that I was talking to Ryan Walsh today at Sports Intel, I think the last month he has put himself ahead of Kansas City's manager of the year conversation. I think Stephen Voigt should get manager of the year because of the circumstances he walked into Cleveland. He's never managed before, A.
Yeah.
B, he took over for legend and Terry Francona. C, the amount of injuries to the starting rotation in Cleveland is ridiculous. But again, Cleveland also
they don't have
I was just gonna say their bullpen. That's it. I mean, whether Chas or Mangle, Chas, or I can't even say his name last name right.
Class A. Yeah, Class A
is gonna be like Cy Young or not. I mean, Kirk Skubal. That's the way you should vote for that. But no, it's Cleveland. Stephen Voigt deserves some credit, but AJ Hinch with this lineup, you give any other manager entire history, you give Sparky Anderson this lineup. He would have lost his patience a long time ago, because remember, he didn't like young prospects. He was a veteran guy.
Yep.
So
he wanted to win now. Yep.
Yeah.
And I do think that kind of goes back to what Bobby Scales was touching on. And it's not even, where he was talking about they're tailoring their approach to individual players. But I think they just really have a good idea of what their players can and can't do. And AJ Hinch has a terrific understanding of
Mhm.
where to put players in their best chance to succeed. And you know, we'd all want to see Kerry Carpenter bat against everybody all the time, but it's hard to argue with the results, right? Like maybe he doesn't have a 170 WRC plus if he's playing more. I'm happy with the production so far.
Yeah, I mean, at some point I'm gonna go on an epic run of just glazing AJ Hinch all over the place because, you know, I've tried to explain this to people. It goes so far beyond managing. You know, AJ Hinch has, you know, a level of experience in all parts of the game that the Tigers have never had really in a manager. I mean, to have a guy who's been in player development, he's been in scouting, you know, he's been, you know, worked in the front office, he's managed, you know, a young, you know, scrappy Arizona Diamondbacks team that was kind of like a mixed bag of talent. And then he had the Astros, which were like a juggernaut where he had like, you know, this massive brain trust of, fix-it artists and data scientists up there, you know, like, you know, micromanaging kind of the whole thing. And now he's back with like this scrappy bunch of punk kids. And every year that AJ Hinch has been here, that's whatever scrappy bunch of punk kids has come up, they finish strong every year. Every year, you know, May, June, something has got to be done about May and June. Because every year, you know, from July on, AJ Hinch teams do really well, and you know, young players start to blossom, and he's, you know, pushing all the buttons. All of a sudden, you're like, you know, what happened in May and June? Why can't, you know, can we just put Casey or you know, Riley and Carey in a hermetically sealed envelope and take them out after the All-Star break? Because you know, there's just been so much that's gone right, and you know, you just see, you know, his hands and everything. His hands are, you know, on Ryan Garco. His hands are on, you know, getting Chris Better here. His hands are on Gabe Rivas. You know, he probably had a big hand in hiring Scott Harris. You know, I don't know that for a fact, but we do know he was interested. You know, he was interviewing him. He was one of the main interviewers. You know, how many times have you heard of a lame duck GM like Cal Avila was in 2022, where, you know, it was like your assistant GM and the manager, you know, have to be consulted on all decisions. You know, this is AJ Hinch's team, and he's probably giving it up to Scott Harris now, you know, and happy to like just be able to focus on what his job is. But so much of this, you know, if there's a one person who this all goes back to, it's AJ.
Yeah. Well, in one thing you know, I think that there was a lot of criticism of Scott Harris that I felt was kind of unwarranted, and now there's kind of a decent amount of giving him credit that's probably unwarranted too. Like I don't think for a second that they thought Trey Sweeney was going to be the guy who guided them to the playoffs, right? But I do think in it's interesting you brought that up. I think Hinch probably had a huge role in this, but I always appreciate when somebody new comes in like Harris did, and he didn't broom everyone, right? Like they got rid of some people, but he actually kept a lot of people. And that makes me think that like they probably went through and evaluated everybody and had a good idea of like, this person is good at their job and we should keep them. And I think that's like, so often you see people to just bring in a wholesale changes, like everything's going on wrong here. And I don't think that's the right way to do things either. But because you see that we saw that with the Lions, 70 different times. And anyway, some people would stay like cockroaches, right? But like, I think it's a good sign of leadership when you can actually come in and judge people based on their merit in what they can do for you, rather than just be like, hey, I trust this person. So I don't know. I think that's hopefully that's a good sign for the future. But you know, there's work to be done. But again, I don't want to focus on the work to be done until this current work is done. And there's 6 games to do it.
Leaders that are asking for trust and loyalty all the time, you know, are usually bad ones, because you should be going on, much more objective, objective means than that. Like, you know, I shouldn't have to be able to trust you, because we should be talking and we should know what each other's doing, like we should be in sync. We should understand each other, rather than like some kind of blind, like hierarchy. Just, that just doesn't work in the game, anymore. So there it is.
Yeah, and I know we've been on here for a long time. We don't really need to go through all the minors because there wasn't much. I did want to mention we talked about Ace Lannard having a nice final week. I also wanted to give a shout out to Akil Badu, who I think in his final game, probably in the Tiger organization, hit a home run and had a 2-run double, I think. So it was like just a nice way to go out. He kind of went out the way he came in. Now I don't know for sure that he's gone, but it seems likely that he is.
And that comes back to the 40-man roster is actually looking like kind of a problem this offseason. There's some guys that are going to be really tough decisions, So it's going to be interesting. But Akil, credit to him. I'm sure this didn't work out like he wanted to, or any of us did, but he didn't go down and sulk or become a problem child. Coming back and forth and all that. He's always seemed to like put a pretty good effort in with the Mud Hens, and is a really good AAA player, and just hasn't been able to take that last step. With the bat, which is unfortunate. He has the discipline, he's got the power, got the speed. Seems like a smart, hardworking dude for the most part. So. Yeah, it's maybe he just is another one that just needs a change of scenery and maybe more of an opportunity. I don't know.
Yeah, good clubhouse guy, everything, for all accounts. So it's the same thing with like just the amount of with like, for example, the Javi, or not Javi Baez, but same thing with like Ryan Kreidler. I don't know if he's going to be back next year. There's a couple things that just seem like those kind of swan songs. Navigado comes to mind too. Because there's gonna be more emphasis on bringing in some others. I think the continuation of Harris bringing in people like, I think with even Hayu Lee probably gonna start the season. Toledo, a lot of those guys in the area are gonna graduate, and so I think we're gonna see next year. And I'm gonna be talking about this in the West Michigan recap. Same thing with Lakeland. Just even our player of the year too. We've decided. I think we decided the pitcher of the year, Chris. I think we talked about this, and Brandon. I think I'll get my extra input on this too, but we'll talk about that a little later. But do yourself a favor. Go to the games. Tomorrow's a 1:00 game instead of the 7:00 because of the weather. Go down there, support the Tigers. Do what you got to do. This is an exciting time. We're not going to say what potentially is going to happen after this, but there's things that are happening. And if you look at the standings, I don't need to say it because this is it. And if anything, if you're gonna be there, cool, Dan. I'll be there Thursday too. I will be there. We will be around. Thursday will be the normal Motor City Metrics podcast. But if the Tigers happen to be celebrating some sort of something that involves them going to playing around my birthday, which is coming up in October, then good time.
Mine too.
Yeah. Yes, Adam will be live tomorrow for the Seawolves game. We'll be live for a little while. We'll be broadcasting probably. So we'll be on for about at least an hour. So
it'll be interesting to see what they do there because they haven't announced the starter. They tried the bullpen thing the other day. They were emulating what the Tigers did, and it wouldn't shock me if they go do the same thing and like start Peguero and then follow him up with Carlos Pena or something like that.
Or Austin Berner.
So they could just go back to Berner, who pitched 6 hitless innings the other day. It was like, all right, fine.
That's true.
That works too. So
it was Higginbotham and then Burhan, I think is who they used. Is that right?
I think so.
Higginbotham. Yeah. It was. Yeah. So they have Burhan pitched up pretty well too out of the bullpen. So we'll see what happens. But game 2 of that will start at 6:35. I think it's first pitch. In Somerset, where you think they have a camera in the center field.
I forgot about that. Yes, the way that they absolutely bombed Erie 2 years ago was very suspect. I will try to. I may be a little bit late. My son's got soccer practice from 5:30 to 6:30. But if the weather is really, really bad and there's like lightning, that might not happen. So we'll see.
Yeah, it's the fall. The end of summer is still. Technically, it's the end of summer because
we're in fall now.
Yeah, it's technically fall, but the boys of summer are still playing. So. We'll see you again. Thank you so much for donating. We had a couple donations last week. Thank you so much. Thank you for supporting the website. Thank you for going to our website, TigersMLReport.com. Again, scouting report. Emily Walden did a really good job on a Steph Stevenson piece. Check that out too. The Baseball
Jerry
America
did a piece on relievers.
Yes. Yeah, thank you. Jerry did a great job on relievers piece. Yeah. And Baseball America voted Max Clark the Tiger of the Year, Detroit Tigers of the Year, and he's been on Twitter, just been on fire too. Max Clark's been a fun follow on Twitter during these last couple games too. So for myself, Brandon, and Chris, we will, for you guys, we'll talk to you guys tomorrow.
Thanks again to Bobby Scales.
Thank you again, Bobby Scales. Go to blessyouboys.com as well. All the great content over there, and Brandon and his crew. And we'll talk to you soon, guys. Have a good night, everybody.
Thanks.